Okay, here we go again. Should I start by repeating the previous break? Nah. Well, yeah, sure. It was this one. And then I'll start.
AlexandZilla.com. Bang Alex and Dad. Gaming videos and more from Alex. Elementary school by day. YouTube by night. AlexandZilla.com. Alexandzilla is ALEXMXELA and .com is period and then COM.
And I'm back. As promised, it's been a long time for me and only a little bit of time for you. For me, it's now Sunday, July 12th at 21:30 UTC, just a few minutes after. And I know I said I was going to talk about Graham Plattner next, but there in fact was big breaking news as I knock things over on my desk. Hold on. But there was, in fact, big breaking news while you were listening to that break. Namely, Senator Lindsey Graham died on Saturday evening, or sometime Saturday. I don't know exactly what time it was, but Saturday, the news broke Saturday evening, pretty late even here on Pacific time. But obviously, I think by the time it broke, most people on the East Coast were long asleep. But the latest update on that, we just had his team give like a whatchamacallit, a thingy, a do, a ba ba ba, an update on the cause. And so it was apparently an aortic dissection due to arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So basically, if I understand that right, that means his aorta ruptured. An aortic dissection causes massive internal bleeding, prevents blood from reaching vital organs, and is often fatal without immediate treatment. It had been reported earlier that it was cardiac related, but in any case, Lindsey Graham, as I posted on the Curmudgeon's Corner Slack and elsewhere, this was not the senator that we were expecting this kind of news about at any moment. Because, of course, we also have the Mitch McConnell situation continuing to go on, where his true condition is unknown, but he's been hospitalized for weeks. I saw just a few minutes ago a post from someone, Rick Wilson, I think it was, saying basically, look, a whole bunch of reporters know his condition. They're just not reporting it yet. What did Rick say? Now I'm going to have to find it. Rick Wilson. There we go. Let's see. I think it was Rick Wilson. Maybe it wasn't. Now I've got to spend time finding the thing. Folks on the live stream will be bored. It's okay. Okay, here we are. It was a quote from Rick Wilson on some thing. I don't know where he was talking. He says, I guarantee you there are 10 reporters in D.C. right now who know exactly what Mitch McConnell's medical status is, maybe more. They're not reporting it. Then he says, and he is not a reporter. So the various reasons reporters might hold back on something is they've heard something but don't have adequate confirmation from it in places, etc. But he says, we know from people who are very clear that he's in a certain rehab wing for acute cardiac failure, all this stuff at the hospital. He is alive. Our source is not able to say if he's conscious or cogent. And Rick Wilson goes on to say he doesn't think the magical 20-minute conversations that have been reported are real. Anyway, we've been on sort of Mitch McConnell watch, expecting any time we'll get some sort of update there. Either they'll come clean and say he's in intensive care and here's his condition and he's not expected to recover, or he is expected to recover but he'll be in rehab for months, or that his condition is worsened and he's died, or whatever. And of course the rumor mills keep talking about maybe he's already dead. I just don't believe that. I think the truth is much simpler, that he's in really, really bad shape in the hospital. Whether or not he's conscious or not is an open question, but he's clearly not like in a position to resume his senatorial duties. I guess I could be proved wrong. Like the Senate supposedly is coming back into session tomorrow as I record this, and maybe he'll just show up. But I kind of doubt it. But yeah, we weren't expecting Lindsey Graham, and of course people have speculated. There was all kinds of he just came back from Ukraine. Was this an assassination? Was it the Russians? Check his radiation levels. Did he take some polonium tea? Whatever. But it looks like it's just heart issues. That's it. And he was 71, which relatively young still, but yeah. And I won't spend a lot of time on his history. I mean, look, he proved himself to be an opportunist. And I'm going to look up another quote real quick. I'm going to go find this. It would be nice if I had posted these when I saw them so that I could just look at my own posts and find out these things to read. But instead, I'm remembering them right now as I'm recording, and therefore can't find them. Like, who was the guy who said this? Okay. I'm going to take a minute here. I did find this in the meantime. This is William Browder, who is not known as a conspiracy theorist, but he wrote the Maginski Act, which is the one that sanctioned Russians that were related to, like, it was a response to various assassinations. He says, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but Lindsey Graham was the leading driver of the devastating sanctions bill against Russia. Yesterday, he announced that President Trump agreed to it. He had just returned from Ukraine, where it's not unknown for Russian agents to operate. Russians are expert at administration of poisons that look like heart attacks. All tests should be done immediately to rule out foul play. I've seen enough Russian-related suspicions of deaths to know this is the only course of action. And yeah, so wait until the evidence. I mean, he's again, the more up to date thing is his office says, aortic dissection, a tear caused by cardiovascular disease, sounds like a pre-existing cardiovascular disease. So that's the simple explanation. And now I'll try to find that other thing. Oh wait, we've got Mitch McConnell news too. Just okay, hold on. News breaking while I'm here. Let's see, who's this? Make sure it's from a reliable sender. Editor at HuffPost. Okay, Mitch McConnell has released a photo and the first statement on his condition. It's got a photo. He looks like Mitch McConnell. He's not got the tubes and everything. Okay. Mitch McConnell's statement. To my fellow Kentuckians, when you elected me to a 7th term and made me our Commonwealth's longest serving senator, you did so trusting that I'd keep showing up to fight for you every day. And over the past several weeks, Elaine and I have appreciated both your well wishes and your honest questions about what was keeping me away from the Senate. This was just posted minutes ago. You all know how folks of my generation often hesitate to share the vulnerability that comes with growing older. Even in the public eye, I feel that same instinct. I can't help it. But at the same time, I've had more than my share of experience with physical vulnerabilities. Surviving childhood polio meant spending my entire life with mobility challenges. They haven't exactly gotten easier to manage with age. And last month, I took a fall, which landed me in a hospital. My doctors have confirmed that I didn't break any bones or suffer a concussion. I didn't have a heart attack or a stroke. I don't have any tumors or hemorrhages, but I was briefly unconscious and was taken to the hospital. While receiving excellent care over the past several weeks, I've also had to deal with a mild case of pneumonia. I can assure you that I've been a good patient. At my age, I tend to do what my doctors tell me to do. I've submitted to every test that they can think of to help figure out what caused this incident, and I'm continuing to do everything they ask to speed my recovery. In fact, with signs of continued progress, I've been able to move from hospital care to a rehabilitation center where I'll keep regaining my strength. As much as it frustrates me, this process takes time, and on the advice of my doctors, I won't be able to return to the Senate floor to vote quite yet. But rest assured that in the meantime, I'm not taking a break from the Senate business that matters to you. I've been working closely with my legislative staff on current issues and with my Kentucky team who help me provide timely constituent services across our Commonwealth. I've also been keeping in touch with my Senate colleagues on the appropriations process, midterm politics, and everything in between. You're right to expect your representatives to work hard for you, and part of my decision to retire at the end of my term this coming January was being honest about the demands of Senate work. But I still have unfinished business to complete on your behalf, and I have every intention of finishing the job you elected me to do. I'll keep working hard to get back on the Senate floor as soon as possible, and I'll keep you posted on the progress of my recovery. Until then, I'm so grateful for your prayers and your well wishes. So, there you go. Interesting. Okay, now I'm going to go back to looking for that other thing. People on live, hold on. People recording, I'll be back shortly. Well, it'll just seems like seconds to you, except for the fact that I keep blabbering. Okay, here is the quote. This was from Steve Schmidt. And this it was said years ago, but I think sort of summarizes what Graham's been like, and was made obvious by his turn for Donald Trump. Because the Lindsey Graham and his reputation when he was sort of like John McCain's best friend and they did stuff together and they were the Mavericks and sort of they were the Republicans that were willing to work across the aisle with Democrats and all this kind of stuff. I saw something from Cory Booker today talking about some bill he worked with Lindsey Graham on, and how, they were friends and it was whatever, But no, this is from Steve Schmidt. People try to analyze Lindsey through the prism of the manifest inconsistencies that exist between things that he used to believe and what he's doing now, Schmidt says. The way to understand him is to look at what's consistent. And essentially, what he is in American politics is what, in the aquatic world, would be a pilot fish, a smaller fish that hovers about a larger predator, like a shark living off its detritus. That's Lindsey. And when he swam around the McCain shark, broadly viewed as a virtuous and good shark, Lindsey took on the patina of virtue. But wherever the apex shark is, you find the Lindsey fish hovering about. And Trump's the newest shark in the sea. Lindsey has a real draw to power, but he's found it unobtainable on his own merits. And, I feel like that's the thing that makes Lindsey Graham make sense, is exactly that. Like, when he saw John McCain as his path to power, he imitated John McCain and went along with those things. And if you remember in the 2016 race, Lindsey Graham was one of Trump's greatest critics. He's the one who said, if we nominate him, it will destroy us. And honestly, it kind of has. I mean, they've won the presidency twice. They've gained a lot of things, but the Republican Party of today is nothing but a vessel for Donald Trump at the moment. If that changes after Donald Trump is gone, who knows what form they will take, how strong they will be or not. There's a lot of open questions there. But the destroy us doesn't necessarily mean the Republican Party won't win. Obviously, they did win. They won in 2016. They won again in 2024. They've had amazing, wins in terms of getting things that they'd wanted for years. But the Republican Party of 2026 bears almost no resemblance to the pre-2016 Republican Party. It is not the same thing. It does not have the same values. It does not have the same core issues. It does not have, there are obviously through lines that you can draw. But the Republican Party that Lindsey Graham was talking about in 2016 is in fact destroyed and dead and gone. What we have now is entirely different. And we shall see. And I've also, seen posts today about people, revealing that they claim they had, relations with Lindsey Graham, in some cases that he paid for, of a non-straight variety, which, there have been rumors of this going on before. There have been people who came out saying this before. The one I saw today, there may be no proof whatsoever. But I think that there's also this element of like, all along was he a closeted gay man that, did a lot of things basically to hide that and to, sort of counter, like prove he's not gay by doing anti-gay things and things like, and I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know the truth of that. I mean, those rumors have gone on for forever. And, the shame of all of those kinds of things is not, oh my God, he was gay. If he was, I don't know. But rather, why did he feel he couldn't just be open about it? And why, it seems like this, I don't know, there's so much damage caused by things like that. And Lindsey Graham may be one of those things, or maybe not. We don't know. But yeah, apparently Lindsey Graham is gone, and apparently Mitch McConnell is not. And he is indeed, like I speculated right before I saw that news alert come through, that he is recovering and is going to go into rehab. And yeah, who knows if he's there? There's what, 6 months? 6 months left, a little bit under 6 months left of his term. Who knows if he'll be back in time for that? But yeah. Yes. Okay. You know, I'm tempted to just leave the segment there, but I had promised Graham Plantner talk. So let me do that for a few minutes before I take my next break. So Graham Plantner's out. Credible accusations of sexual assault and rape from an ex-girlfriend. Said he was drunk, came over to her place and forced himself on her, basically, after she had told him not to come. Look, you know, Yvonne and I talked about him a little bit before the main primary, the Democratic primary that he won. And basically, at that point, we already had all the red flags. We'd had accusations in the New York Times of inappropriate behavior with women. And a lot of it, you know, some of it was being dismissed because one of the women that had the most detailed accusations was a Republican operative. And so people are like, we don't trust her. But that same New York Times article had accusations from like 6 different women, including someone who had worked on his campaign and left, and apparently also including the woman who just came out again now. And just without the level of detail. And she said the reason she felt like she had to come out now was in part because the New York Times article didn't get people not to vote for him. And she was upset about the way they dismissed the Republican with accusations. And you know, it's also come out in a reporting this week that one of the consultants who was sort of responsible for finding and hyping up this guy as a candidate also has a history of sexual abuse allegations, which might be one of the reasons why when these started to come up, he's like, those are no big deal. Look, what Yvonne and I said in the weeks before the primary was like, look, I don't understand why he wasn't gone after the Nazi tattoos. Or certainly after the first New York Times article. Or, you know, even the thing about sexting people, although that seemed fully consensual and his wife had made peace with it, whatever. But all of these are just like, this isn't a great guy. Why are you putting everything behind him? And the reason was, and I've heard interviews this week with people who were former supporters of his who feel betrayed by all this and are like, look, he attitude wise, and Yvonne and I have both talked about how, you know, the mood right now is people who will fight. And he had that. He was someone who gave the vibes of, he would fight for you. He was pushing a lot of the right issues, and even ones that are theoretically the ones that Democrats tend to run away from. He was still pushing them, but doing so in a way that was fighting and honest. And I've said on this show lots of times, people can sense the people who are triangulating their views to try to views to try to get the median voter. And you might have better luck with someone who's not trying to do that, but who believes a certain set of things and pushes them hard. And he gave those vibes, and people were really excited about him. And apparently, he's very charismatic in person. And so lots of folks in Maine really, really liked him and really liked his attitude and liked that he was going to fight for them and was going to do this and was going to do that. And awesome. And, what Yvonne and I also said at that point is like, look, it looks like he's going to win the primary. And if so, hey, it's what we got. Still better than Susan Collins. I wish this was not who they were picking, but it apparently is who the people of Maine are picking. And so you gotta go with what you gotta go. All his opponents in the primary were polling way, way below him. He was polling well against Collins as well before all this started to hit. Then that started to deteriorate. And I'd said a few times, I want to win. I want to win that Senate race, and if it looks like he's the best chance of winning, great. But with the caveat that and when Yvonne and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, we were like, he's clearly lying, right? Like when he denies these things, he's clearly lying. He knew about this stuff. There's plenty of evidence that maybe he didn't know the Nazi tattoo at the time he got it, but he certainly did shortly thereafter. And he kept denying that he knew what it was, and he didn't move to get it removed until it became a big deal and blew up in the press. And then his denials about the New York Times article and that first set of allegations just didn't really seem credible. And so the worry was always, what else is there? Now, apparently, the Republicans also had an oppo book on him and were planning on dumping a bunch of additional stuff after they passed the deadline, so it was too late to replace him. So this preemptive strike to get him out while there was still time to replace him is better than that, probably. I still, it would have been nice if the Democrats had, the Democratic primary voters in Maine hadn't picked him in the first place, had realized some of these red flags and gone with somebody else, anybody else. But that's not the world we're in. Now he's officially out. He dragged his feet a bit. His statement about doing so was full of bitterness and spite and additional denials. And, I don't believe the denials. Now, even the woman who accused him said he was like blackout drunk. He may not actually even remember the event in question. That's possible. But, you'd still hope that if he was thinking about, the good of the party, the good of the country, the good of Maine, that whatever bitterness he had, he would put it aside and just say, for the good of everybody, I'm out. I still deny everything, but I'm out. Instead, 11-minute long video, basically ranting and blaming everybody but himself, not apologizing for anything. The guy's scum. So now Maine has to pick a replacement. Given the timing, they have just a few weeks to get a replacement. I'd seen one suggestion, and I don't know if it was even possible or not, that since Maine has ranked choice voting, whether they could have just gone back to those votes and figured out if he had been eliminated, where would all of the second choice votes have gone? I think that would have been very interesting and to see where that was. But that is not what's happening. I don't even know if it will be logistically possible. Like, would they release all those second and third and fourth choice votes above and beyond if he already won? I don't know. Anyway, instead, the Democratic Party of Maine is having a convention with a little over 600 people. Somewhere between 100 and 200 of them, I believe, are the members of the whatever committee. It's the equivalent of like the super delegates in the national Democratic conventions, and then the rest are going to be chosen by county parties. Excuse me. The rest are going to be chosen by county parties. And the big question at this point is, who are they going to pick? And what are their chances going to be? And specifically, is it going to be a centrist type person who the establishment Democrats like, or is it going to be another progressive style person that shares some of Plantner's views and that Sanders and those folks like? And I've seen, and look, I'm not sure how it's going to work out, because the whole process of choosing delegates that are going to go to this convention and having them vote on this actually favors sort of party activists and people who have been involved in the party a long time, and disfavors sort of the upstart type candidates who were liked by the general population but don't necessarily have that history and involvement in the party apparatus. So it could go either way. Now, there's a controversial video that Joyanne Reed, who used to be on MSNBC back in the day and now does independent stuff, put out a thing that basically said, look, they really need to nominate another progressive, because that's what all the voters were excited about. And that's, if they go and nominate a centrist, then they are risking losing, because a lot of the people who were excited won't be and just won't show up and vote. Now, I agree with part of that, but Joanne Reed went on to say, and if you're one of those people who is excited about him, I wouldn't blame you at all if you sat out the election under those circumstances. Screw him. That's the part I disagree with. I think her analysis might be right, though. That as much as those people, because she was all like, vote blue no matter who is bullshit. If they put in somebody who does not represent sort of that wing of the party after he won handily in the primaries, then, somebody, I think her words were, somebody needs to show the Democrats they can't just assume, I think that's wrong, because the analysis you still have to make is, purity tests aside, if you end up with a binary choice between some Democrat that you don't particularly like or are excited about and the Republican, you pick the one that's closer to your views, even if they don't match exactly, even if the process made you upset to get there. At least that's how you should do it. But where I think she's right is that's not how the real world often works. There were a lot of people that were really excited about Plantner, whatever. There were a lot of people who were really excited about him who will not necessarily be excited about whoever replaces him. And there have been a lot of comparisons to, Biden endorsing Kamala as soon as he dropped out. In that, while yes, there were people who were excited about Kamala Harris, there were other people who resented the fact that she essentially just got the spot without a real competition. Now, I want to be clear. The process was clearly laid out there. There were delegates that were assigned throughout a whole primary process that, had to vote on this. And they all flocked to her very quickly. She had enough delegates to lock up the nomination. Like, I forget how, I think it was less than a week. I forget exactly how long it took her, but it was really fast. Now, those were all Biden delegates because Biden didn't have any serious competition in the primaries for obvious reasons. Incumbent presidents rarely do. Every once in a while, there's a serious competition. He had no serious competition. There were like one or two candidates who even bothered, trying, and they got nowhere. They got absolutely nowhere. They were no names that nobody had ever heard of, and they had no money, no attention, and, got nowhere. But this is slightly different. The delegates to this convention are not picked yet, and there's going to be a process to pick those delegates. Hopefully, they will do this in a way that makes the Plantner voters feel like they're part of the process. I could definitely see a scenario where they don't, and these people feel betrayed. And if that happens, then a lot of them probably will stay home. And Collins will win. If they manage to pick somebody who's able to excite these people, then Collins may still win. Who knows? Like, it depends on who they pick. And there are a number of candidates. There's one of them who was more sort of a planter side names. There was one that was more aligned in viewpoint than the others. Who knows how he'll do? And also, who knows? There's the whole charisma issue too. Like, that was a big part of Plantner's appeal. Was people got really excited about him. People liked listening to him. People, all this kind of stuff. And who knows whether the replacement will have that same appeal. Maine was, of the race for the Senate, Maine was is a critical part of the path to any hopeful Democrats retaking the Senate. And, we've said before, look, the Senate is in play now, but the Republicans are still favored. Let's be absolutely clear about that. The Democrats have to essentially win all of the competitive races and don't lose any of the non-competitive races and surprises. They have to run the table. And Maine is part of that. And they have to stretch it. They have to win like someplace like Texas, or Montana or something. And Maine was a critical part of that path. Again, is a critical part of that path. And Plantner, before all his scandals, was winning in most polls against Collins. By the time he dropped out, it was neck and neck, and his support was falling. I've seen a handful of polls with some of the potential replacements for him, and they're mixed. Some of them do better than Collins. Some of them are tied with her. Some of them do worse, and it's unclear. Honestly, if I was in Maine, I would want to see more of those polls, and I'd want to pick the one who was doing best in those polls against Collins, but with the caveat that, as has just been pointed out in stunning fashion by Plantner himself, he was beating Collins handily in the polls. He was doing better than any of his competitors against Collins in the polls. But when you vetted him, he had big issues. So it's going to be important, and they've got limited amount of time, but somebody should be digging deeply into the pasts of all of these candidates to see if they've got either similar kinds of problems or entirely different kinds of problems. You don't want to find out. You don't want to pick one of these guys and then find out in October that, they're secretly a crack dealer or something. You got to figure that stuff out. And we've got a short timeline to figure out what's happening there. And speaking of which, we didn't talk about replacing Lindsey Graham. So let's do that briefly as well. So in the case of Lindsey Graham, the situation is that he was up for re-election this year anyway. He had already won his primary. So this is all different state by state. Like we were talking, apparently McConnell's going to make it, but we were talking a couple weeks ago about or last week, whatever it was, about the laws in Kentucky and how you replace a senator and special elections and all this kind of stuff. Those differ state by state. In South Carolina, the situation is that the governor gets to appoint a replacement to serve out the rest of Lindsey Graham's term right away. And that replacement would only serve until the beginning of January. So they get to pick someone and get them in place, get them sworn in, get them in. Meanwhile, because there's still time to do so, there's a deadline after which this wouldn't be the case anymore. But South Carolina is going to have a really quick primary, like a spot primary, like within weeks, like to replace him on the Republican ticket. So just within the next, really, we're talking timelines of days. We need to hear like who's running for that spot. And then there's going to be a primary in like 2 weeks. And then we'll have a new Republican candidate for senator in South Carolina. Now, in South Carolina, this had not been particularly on the list where Democrats thought they had a chance to pick it up. But I just saw that there had been some recent polls against the Democrat who is running against who had already won her primary. Some doctor. I should look up the name. Let me. There's been a lot of looking up. Usually when Yvonne is here, one of us can look things up while the other one continues to talk. But I'm here by myself. So here we go. Well, not by myself. Alex is here. But, okay. Her name is Ann Andrews.
Hello, and we're using Moose phone, and my iPad just stop. But we're doing number let's open. And
Yes. Alex is here, but Alex doesn't talk anymore. So he was playing a highlight from his YouTube channel, episode 655. Let's open 10 Hot Wheels. Anyway, the Democratic candidate is Ann Andrews, and apparently there had been some recent polls showing her at like 3% behind. Which, okay, it's not ahead or anything of Lindsey Graham, but it's a lot closer than you'd expect in South Carolina. Now, importantly, that was like one or two polls. There were others showing her further behind. But in this case, it's unclear whether this helps her or not. It depends on who they pick to replace Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham wasn't particularly liked all that much in South Carolina anymore. He was kind of tolerated because, you know, he had flipped and he was sort of with Donald Trump now, and you know, the old Lindsey Graham that liked John McCain probably would have lost in a primary in South Carolina years ago. But because he became Trump adjacent, he survived a little bit longer politically. I mean, obviously, he's dead now, but it's unclear. Like, and I've started to hear a few names of possibilities of people who could run, but we don't really know yet. It's way too soon. At the moment, it's been less than 24 hours since the news of Lindsey Graham's death hit. So we'll need to see who the possible candidates are and how they might do. I still don't. South Carolina would still not be on my list for a Democratic pickup for the Senate. I mean, look, if we're in a world where the Democrats pick up South Carolina, that means they've already got all the other states. They've already got Texas. They've already, all of these other states, they're winning in. Maybe they win in Kentucky too, with whatever, like that is, the scenario here. Like, look, again, for the Democrats to win, they have to run the table on the competitive races, of which South Carolina was not really considered one of them. And that gets them to a just bare minority, like a 51-49 Senate or something like that. Because remember, 50-50, Vance still is the tiebreaker, so that's still Republican. So they need to get to 51-49. In a world where South Carolina actually gets picked up too, we're talking more than 51. And that it's already, like, Democrats getting to 51 is in play, but a long shot. They have to get everything going perfectly for them. Getting beyond that seems like crazy talk. So Mrs. Andrews here, Ms. Andrews, is probably still not going to win in South Carolina. But, whenever something like this happens, it scrambles everything. So we have to wait to see who the real candidate is, and then get some polling, and then see what that looks like. But apparently the whole process is going to be really damn fast. So we'll know in just a few weeks. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to take a break. I think I forget if I mentioned or not. After the last segment, I was going to go out and do signs and stuff like that. I did some other stuff first, and then I did signs, but it was already late. Got such a late start yesterday. My target is doing 4 hours of signs every weekend, and I did 2 hours yesterday. So I'm going to do another 2 hours of signs before I come back and do a last segment here. And I'm going to do a couple other things I need to do too. But it's, anyway, I'll be back. I'll finish this up later, and then we'll continue to there. Maybe there'll be more breaking news, or maybe not. If there's no breaking news, we still have the NATO summit, Iran, Air Force One, and Binface on my list. If there is breaking news, who knows? Anyway, that's it for now. I'll be back after this break, like a minute or so, for actually less than a minute for those of you listening on the proper podcast. There's nobody watching live right now, but if you're watching the live stream after the fact, just so you can see the video of me with Alex making faces behind me, then it'll be at least hours before I come back, maybe more. We'll see. Anyway, here's the break. What? No, that was bad. Oh, no, that was bad. No, I don't like that either. Once upon a rainbow, you were on the floor, eating the bugs that you found upon my face. No, that's what? Bye. Okay, hitting stop on the live stream.